Alright, so I'm back, and today we're going to do another rant of the week. And today, what we're going to talk about is the difference between toy and collectible. This is by request. There's a lot of things that one can say is a toy, and there's a lot of things that someone can say is a collectible. Now, it's such a broad line, because a lot of people can say that my toy is a collectible, and a lot of people can say my collectible is a toy, and for me that's the best way to go. The big difference here is the fact that when I think about something, a toy is something you can play with, something you can give your kid, or if you are a kid, you can pick up yourself and just play with it, mess with it. If it breaks, so what? You might be devastated because it's something awesome for you. He's over there, but my hooligan, for example, that's a great toy. Yes, I collected him. He's in my collection now, but he's a toy. Let's not sit here and decide whether or not he's a collectible. He's a toy. Most Hasbro products are toys first, and then if you can collect them, great. That boosts the value. Prowl here, he's a very sought after collectible to an extent, but at the end of the day, he's a toy. Now, a lot of Takara versions of the same toys are more in the collector market because they cost a little bit more, and collecting or a collector's item is not just because of the cost, but they cost a little bit more, they have better paying apps, and they take a little bit more time to work out quality control issues, for the most part. I mean, obviously there's always exceptions to every rule, but that's a huge difference. Marvel Legends figures, one could argue those are collectible items, but I'd put them more in the toy category, and save things like Marvel Select as the collector's items. Now, you can collect the Marvel Legends, that's there's nothing against that. The Marvel Select figures, though, for the most part, are not good at being toys. They are meant to be collectibles. If you've ever gotten Marvel Select figures and you try to play with it like you would play a toy, you know what I'm talking about. It just doesn't work. Just like a third-party figure. For the most part, the third-party figures are collectibles. Does that mean they're not good toys? No. No, it doesn't. It doesn't mean anything. For example, this figure here, he's a great collectible item. This is the Gigapowers Gutter. Which I love this figure. I'm going to be reviewing him real quick here. I wanted to do him last week, but I got my display thing set up and I wanted to do the Megatron. But anyway, he's a great collectible, but he also can double as a toy because he is a playable figure. Apollyon is not a toy. He is a collectible. If you guys have Apollyon, you know what I'm talking about. He's not fun to play with. Now, an MP Seeker, on the other hand, now this is definitely in the collector's market because this is the Takara Starscream, and it's $200. Definitely a collector's piece, but it's also playable, so I would still consider it a toy. It's so fine line on some of these things. A lot of people will actually argue with me and say this is strictly a collectible. It's not a toy. It's not meant to be played with. But I've been messing with these guys since I got them in. I got the Skywarp too. I got a good deal on these guys and got rid of the iGear ones because official. Why not? Like I said in my iGear review, it's like I like them, and the only thing that's better than them. The only reason why these guys would be better than them is because they're official, and I'm standing by that statement. Although the Skywarp is awesome, absolutely awesome. $200+, not that awesome, but pretty damn close. Anyway, we'll get into that when I review these guys. When I review these guys, I'm just going to go from jet to robot as opposed to robot to jet to robot, just because of the fact that we've seen this transformation a bunch, and we're going to see more of it. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 more MP Seekers to review, so I'll try and crank those out as quickly as I can. Anyway, last topic. MP Optimus Prime, he is a collectible, but you can also consider him a toy because he is very playable. He's a fun toy. Same with Soundwave and most of the MP cars. All the MP cars. Now, on the flip side of that, Combiner Wars Optimus Prime is a toy. He is not a collectible. That thing, no. You can collect him, but he is not collectible. If you know what I mean. He's not something... I would define, being a collectible is something that you can put on your shelf and just be proud of. And the general population would sit there and say, oh, that's pretty cool. And most people would look at your Combined Wars Optimus Prime and be like, why do you have that sitting next to your MP cars or what have you? He doesn't hold a candle to the MP10 mold. Not even close to that. Yeah, so I'm trying to think of other good examples. The NECA Predators. They're collectibles items. They are not toys. They are not toys at all. If you try to pose those things too much, they're going to start falling apart on you. It's actually to the point where they're barely collectibles because of that. I like them. I think they're cool. I have them in my kitchen, looking over my my dishes, protecting my food and stuff. But yeah, they're not the most pleasant things to play with when you really get down to it. Parts fall off of them, parts break, and I'm not a fan of that. I'm a fan of these particular 3 NECA Predators because that's what I had when I was a kid. I've explained that to you many times, but yeah, they're not as much fun as they should have been. So and that's something that does definitely bug me on some things. Like the NECA Predators, I would have settled with a little less detail and a little bit more playability. Make it a little bit more like a Marvel Legends figure and less like a statue, and I would have been much more happier to have something a little bit more posable, a little bit more playable, a little bit more stable, and maybe drop a few details here and there. That's my opinion. Make Toys is a great example of collectibles that aren't toys, because if you've ever had Make Toys figures, some of them are fun, but for the most part, the Make Toys figures are a pain in the ass to transform. Some of them break, but they look great. I will never sit here and say that Computron didn't look great. Bot modes look good. Few liberties taken that I wasn't too keen on. The alt modes look good, but the combined mode looked amazing. But because of the way it's designed, I couldn't keep mine together. I couldn't keep it from breaking to the point where I was just like, get rid of it. I'm done. So yeah, there's that. They're definitely more in the collector's market as opposed to toy market. Fans toys, on the other hand, those things are definitely collectible items, and they're collectibles. I mean, there's nothing more that needs to be said. But because of their engineering, they are playable. They're good toys. They're good collectible toys. So, and that is one thing that puts certain companies way above and beyond other companies. Fans Toys does this excellently. Mastermind Creations does it pretty well. Takara does it amazingly. Certain Hasbro figures do it pretty well, but they lean more in the toy category. Warbitron is in that category because those figures were fun to mess with. They were borderline on the complicated side. Borderline. But that made them, that still made them fun. When it comes to the complicated things, I did my overcomplicated figure rant a few times, but yeah, they're more in the collectible line and less in the toy line, but they're still in that line. TFC is a good example of a third party that's a toy, because they feel more like toys. They don't feel like high-end collectible items. Everything they put out so far. I can't say for what's coming next, because I've seen some of the things that they're doing next, and I sit there and I say, interesting, because I think it's Leo Kaiser that they're doing next, or down the line somewhere, and it's like, that's impressive. That does not look like a toy. It wouldn't feel like a toy to me. I don't know. I haven't seen it. Toy World is trying to get more into the collector market, but for the most part, they're definitely in the toy market. Some of their figures, like Orion, is more collectible, but other figures like the throttle bots, most of them are toys, and that's one thing that bugged me about the throttle bots, is because the first few that came out were definitely toys, and then as they kept going, they kind of pushed it more into collectors, and it's like, that doesn't work for the aesthetics of the first few. It's like you just totally killed it for me. Let's see. Here's another great example. The Hasbro version of Sunstorm, as opposed to the Takara version of the Seeker mold. This is definitely more, although it's borderline on it, but it's more of a toy than it is a collectible item. If you have a Hasbro Seeker and you put it next to a Takara Seeker, you'll know what I'm talking about. If you feel, it doesn't make sense because it's the same figure, but it almost feels like there's more to this figure than there is to this. There's more paint apps, there's more detail, there's more awesomeness to it. I don't know. And so, it really boils down to what you want in your collection. Do you want toys? Do you want a mix? Or do you want the collectible items? But, ultimately you just gotta think, do you want to take them off the shelf and play with them and mess with them and transform them a bunch of times? Or are you good with putting them on the shelf and let them sit there? Because I'm kind of more in line with the put them on the shelf and just let them sit there. Every now and then I'll grab them off the shelf and mess with them. But for the most part, they just kind of sit there. I just like knowing the fact that, like, MP10, for example, I know I could take it off the shelf and I could play with it. Not that I do. But, I could. Like Combine Wars Prime, I know I could take that off the shelf and play with it, but I don't want it on the shelf. And that brings me into the next part of this rant, is the way Hasbro is doing the Combiner Wars figures. I've ranted about this a few times, about how they're just repainting, and on and on and on and on, and then just they don't stop with the repaints and slight retools, and it gets really under my skin, because that's not a collectible item to me. I sold my Superion, I sold my Defensor, I sold my Menasor, and I'm not sitting here like, wish I didn't do that. Bottom line is, I don't care. I just don't care about it. They're gone. Oh well. I'm debating on getting the Takara versions, but there's a part of me that's like, there's part of me that wants it just for the review's sake, so I can have something to, because right now I'm out of combiners. But there's a part of me that wants them so that I can show them up against other combiners when I get them. But then there's that part of me that's like, but why? I don't want to spend that kind of money to get these things. And they're dirt cheap. It almost disgusts me on some of that. It's such a such a pain in the ass to think about it, and just, I don't know. I mean, I just can't sit here and tell you guys that these are great collectible items. Yeah, I had fun. I gave them good ratings because they're fun toys. That's what I've always said about my ratings. It's like I take into account how much they cost, how much fun they are, and how much detail. It's like, so sometimes the cost and the detail are up there, but they're not quite as fun, and so they'll get the same rating as a Combiner Wars figure that I just have fun messing with. So, yeah, I just, and part of me also just, like, I'm going to get the G2 repaints, and I hope they do all the G2 repaints, because, man, if they were smart about the Bruticus, they will do the same thing they did with the Fall Cybertron Bruticus. Although, please give me a Ruination. Please give me a Ruination, Hasbro. And I'm not talking about the Wreckers Ruination, because that was trash. That was garbage. Don't do that again. Just give me straight repaints. And that's something that really bugs me about these Combiner War lines. And I've said this before, but I'm going to say it again. And it's like, if they did the repaints intelligently, then I'd be able to sit there and say, go Hasbro. You got this. You got this in the bag. Instead of giving us all these crappy Autobots that are coming out next. I mean, first off, let's talk about that. I mean, everyone's saying that Devastator is part of the Combiner Wars, but he's not. He can't be. He's too big. He's twice the size. He's not part of the Combiner Wars line. He can't be. You can't sit there and say he's a combiner and then sit him next to Superion, he's twice the size of, and say that's a combiner too. No. I know I just ranted about this like 2 days ago, but I mean, if they would have, instead of giving us all these crappy Autobot repaints, jumped up the G2 repaints, then I'd be much happier. I'd be much happier. Like, oh, okay, that's kind of cool. And they don't need to do a box set for them. Just release them individually. That'd be kind of cool. Nobody would sit there and say, oh, that's kind of lame. No, just throw them out there. I would be much happier with that. Having Prowl retooled from Dead End, Prowl, who's retooled from Streetwise, who's retooled from Dead End, and then you're gonna use that Prowl mold for this, and this, and this. Anyway, those aren't collectible items. That's my bottom line. They're gonna market them as collectible items. Hell, the Takara version of Superion, I think they're trying to market as a masterpiece figure. Yeah, right. It even comes with like a little masterpiece coin, I believe. It's like, yeah, that's a masterpiece. Those are not collectibles. Those are toys. Those are bottom line toys, and that's a huge problem with what they're putting out. A lot of people are defending them, saying like, well, at least we're getting this and this and this, and it's like, I don't care what we're getting. All we're getting is toys that belong in kids' rooms. I know I'm going to insult some people that I know because they love these things, but that's how I feel. They're toys. They're not collectible items. If you look at some of the Generations figures, those are collectible items. Some of those are definitely collectible items. Yeah, they double as toys, but like Straxus. Okay, Straxus. How is that a toy? How are you going to market that to kids and say that this is, or Skullgrin? No, that is directly aimed at us, the people that buy these things, the adult collectors. That's a collectibles item. Releasing all the Seekers, that's collectibles items. Kids will probably buy them too, but they're not as into it as other things. Making combiners out of every single Autobot, that's a kid's gimmick. That's not aimed for the collectors. They don't care if you buy these things or not. They're selling them to kids. That's all they care about. Remember that when you're sitting there like, should I buy this $20 repaint of Off-Road as Ironhide, or should I hold out and spend about $100 to get the MP Ironhide? or buy one of the other MP Ironhides that are already out. The answer that should always come up is, I should wait and get the real thing and not this cheap repaint that is aimed at kids, because it's not Ironhide. It might be painted like Ironhide. His head might look like Ironhide, but that's not Ironhide. I promise you that's not Ironhide. And when you sit there alone at night thinking about it, when you're sitting there and you're telling everybody that you're satisfied with your purchase, and then you sit there, it's like, well, Ironhide is supposed to have the hood chest here, or the window chest here, and he doesn't have it. He's also supposed to be a van, and yet he's a truck. That's not collector's. That's not a collector's item. When you sit there and you look at your sideswipe or your prowl that's made out of the dead end mold, I actually got the dead end packed right here. Oh no, it's the comic book. Works the same. Okay. So this is what you're gonna get for your prowl. Okay. Here's my problems here. Okay. Here is Universe Prowl. He looks like Prowl. Okay. Now, hood chest, regular chest, hood chest, regular chest, door wings, no door wings. See my problem? That's not Prowl. That's what you're gonna sit there and think about when you have this thing. When you have the new one. It's not Prowl. It's just not Prowl. You could call it Streetwise. I'm okay with it being called Streetwise, but it's not Prowl. Prowl has the wings. Prowl has the hood chest. He's always had the wings and the hood chest. He's always had these shoulder cannons. You know, I think the new one's going to have some sort of shoulder cannon things, but I'm not sure. And if it doesn't have that, that's even one more thing that it doesn't have. This is Prowl. Actually, you know what? This isn't even Prowl. This is Prowl. Except no substitutions. This is your collector's Prowl. If you want the Combiner Wars one, okay, if you're in a Chug collection, you hunt this guy down. If you're into the Combiner Wars and you want to get that, just know that you're getting a white dead end that's not Prowl. Might be called Prowl, but it's not Prowl. You know how all these people say, like, third-party items, like, oh, that's, not Snarl. Okay, that's not Snarl. Well, you know what? This is Snarl. I'm gonna start referring to the Combiner Wars figures because I'm gonna buy them all, and I'm gonna review them all for you. I'm not gonna like it, but I'm going to review them, and I'm gonna try and stay on objective. But I'm gonna sit there and I'm gonna start referring to them. Oh, okay. Here's not Prowl. Here's not Ironhide. Here's not whoever else's Mirage. Now the Mirage that's borderline. He's almost cool, but still, I was talking to somebody else. I posted. Somebody had replied to one of my past comments that said, "Oh yeah, you know, at least we're getting the Prowl and the Ironhide figure." And I was like, "Yeah, but you can also go to Big Bad Toy Store right now and pick up the Henkei repaints of the Universe Prowl, Ironhide, Mirage, and Hound for $95, and which breaks it down to just a little over $30 a piece. And since the Combiner Wars figures are going to $20 a piece, $10 extra for the figure to get the real figure, a real figure that looks like the real character. That's not a bad hit. And a lot of people are saying, well, the Universe Ironhide, John, you said that thing sucks. Well, it does, but the Henkei one was actually really good. It was really solid, great paint detail. I mean, it's all metallic red chrome. I mean, I had it for a minute, and then I sold it because I was going to buy the 3-pack, but then I decided to go back into MPs, so I never got it. But I recommend them. The Henkei ones are so much better than the US ones. And for that price, yeah, you're spending $10 more on a figure, but those are collectibles. I could sit there and say those are collectibles. And they're good figures. They look like the characters they represent. They're not Prowl. I don't know how else I can convey that to you. It's not Prowl. It's not a collectible because it's not the character. I think I've gone on too long. Anyway, I think you guys are getting my point. You know, sometimes third party goes off the reservation, like with their TFC's Superion. The heads are all updated and don't look like. They just don't look like the original characters, and it's like, yeah, I get that. That's not as good as a collectible. Yeah, that's more of a toy. But I don't know. What are your guys' thoughts? Between toy versus collectible. Here's the big question of the day. What is your collection based on? Mine is collectibles that have the toy aspect, but are more on the collectible side. Definitely not full-on collectibles because I cannot afford that, and I like to play with my figures every now and then. Are you guys more into the regular toys, or that semi-resemble the characters, or are you into toys that look like the characters, or are you straight up collectible? You don't dick around. Your Megatron is Apollyon. Your Soundwave is MP Soundwave. You know, you're getting only the high end stuff. You know, you got Star Saber on your shelf, stuff like that. Are you one of those guys? Anyway, I would like to say I feel better now, but I'm actually more heated than I was when I started this video. I almost want to do another rant of the week on that, but I'm not going to. Not yet. Let's see what you guys say about it.